Hey there, and welcome to White Women Wake Up. I'm Karen.
And I'm Jonelle.
Together, we're diving into real, unfiltered conversations about what it means to wake up as white women in a world shaped by bias, power dynamics, and inherited patterns. We're here to challenge norms, examine our assumptions, and foster empathy through raw, intergenerational dialogue. It's not always easy, and we don't always agree, but we show up anyways.
Yes, we do. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Jonelle. How are you?
Good. I had a thought this week, though.
Ooh.
So we're getting new listeners, and I don't know if our intro fully tells the listeners what we do here on this podcast.
Okay.
We definitely break down inherited bias. We definitely have raw conversations, but we don't explicitly tell kind of our process around this. And so I want for all of you who are new, or for those of you who maybe didn't even start out listening to the first episode.
Because this is episode 40.
Episode 40. That is crazy.
Yeah.
I want to kind of reset us a little bit.
Okay, reset.
And so for everyone out there, how we have built this podcast is we wanted to make it as authentic as a conversation as possible. And so what I mean by that, like visualize you're around your dinner table with family members, friends, and someone brings up a conversation, sparks up a conversation. We want to try to recreate that within our own circle. And we do that by not having the other one know our topic of the day.
Yes.
So each episode, one of us comes with a topic, and it can be in the news. It can just be something on the top of our head. It can be something we read recently. And we bring it up raw, like you would, again, in a normal setting with your family and friends. And the other person reacts to that and has a discussion around it. And so it's worked well for us.
Yeah.
We love it. Honestly, this is kind of what we spent our whole life doing in conversations, is bringing
That's
up
what kind of promoted this. Provoked it.
But yeah, so I kind of wanted to level set with everyone who's new here and remind them. So we might need to adjust our intro a little bit to kind of maybe remind everyone every week what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I think why we did this is because you and I would, like a topic would come up, and intergenerationally or generationally, we would kind of view it from different perspectives.
Totally.
And so then we would always kind of argue a little bit. You're right, I'm right. And then kind of figure out where we should go with maybe sometimes agreeing, sometimes not agreeing. Yeah.
I think the only difference now is the person who comes with the topic actually has some backed research to kind of help
instead of just bringing it up.
Instead of just to help forge the conversation, or maybe bridge some of our differing points, kind of thing. But that's what we're about here. If you're new, or you've been listening for a couple, or you just needed a refresher, that's what we're doing.
And one rhythm we've gotten into, and I don't know if it's selfish or what, but we really hope you as a listener are doing the same thing, is after we have our conversation, we're trying to kind of keep it top on our mind so that we're thinking about it throughout the week until we come back again together. And if anything, selfishly, it has really helped me. So with that said, I've been kind of that like some benefits. So last week we were talking.
Explain why it's selfish, though, because
selfish because I shouldn't say selfish. I really feel like it's helping me work on a lot of my issues around bias, a lot of my issues around inherited white women inherited patterns.
But isn't that our goal here?
That is our goal. That is our goal. But I guess I'm hoping that the listener is
appreciate it,
because they're doing the same thing.
The format is good for you.
Yeah, the format is good for me.
Okay,
yeah,
I'm getting it now.
And so hopefully the format is working for our listeners too.
I
do know we're getting some feedback, and I feel bad. A listener gave us feedback last week, and I forgot to bring it. So we'll bring it up next because I want to answer it specifically.
Perfect.
So listeners, keep giving us feedback.
Love feedback.
Someone said that they didn't really know how to give us feedback. So hello@whitewomenwakeup.com is
Yes.
actually probably the best way to go.
Definitely.
If you forget that, it should be linked on
It is linked on our website.
Instagram, our website, all of the above.
TikTok, everywhere. Everywhere you can find us, there will be a link for our email.
And no one wants the URL White Women Wake Up, so it's available on everything.
No, it's not available because we've taken it.
We've taken it. Yeah. Okay, so the reflection this week, and I really wanted to talk about it because I think it really helped me. I brought up the conversation of niceness and how my niceness in some ways was acting as protecting other people or, jumping in because I was afraid of other people's pain.
Yeah.
Or my niceness was a way
it's niceness in quotes.
Yeah, niceness in quotes. Because it's not really nice.
No, it's more protecting yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then it's also like not being explicit. It's actually not very clear often.
No.
It's one thing to be nice to bring someone a milkshake. That's nice, right? It's another thing when we think we're being nice by avoiding topics.
Yeah, give the listener some context of what we meant by nice last week.
Okay, so
if they didn't get a chance to listen.
Well, I think in my case, what I was doing was I was avoiding vulnerable conversations.
Yeah.
So I thought I was being nice by just not engaging in specific topics.
Yeah.
Or just letting things roll over. Or even in my case, my niceness was almost a creation of over-empathy because I didn't want someone else to feel pain or presume that they might not have even been feeling pain, but I was presuming it. So I have to say one of the things that, because we are reflecting on this and because I used to call this homework, but Jonelle got triggered by that word.
Appreciate that.
But for me, kind of doing my homework, I had a situation, and it's so silly, but honestly, this is how I am talking about this. I have a tendency to avoid what I might perceive as confrontational conversations. I don't know because they're not even confrontational. When I finally actually have the conversation, the other person would be like, really? So anyways, I was in a conversation with a friend that was giving an opinion about the way they were interacting with a certain family member or certain family members. And in the past, I would have listened and I might have just simply agreed or looked like I was agreeing because I wouldn't have brought up a counter position. And so this time, instead of being, my family grew up with this politeness is, you don't talk or whatever. This time I said, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. And yet I don't agree. What I have found was XYZ for me. Now, it might work for you, but it wouldn't work for me. And I know that sounds like minor, like a therapist would probably say, yeah, duh. That's like, communication 101. But for me, I was able to do it in the moment. And afterwards, I realized I did it in the moment simply because this was at the top of my mind. It wasn't mean to say that was my point of view. So anyways, that was something I did this week, and I actually felt really good about. I felt, we didn't get in a fight or anything. I felt really good about it.
I was going to say, how did it resolve? So you felt good? You felt...
Yeah, and actually I think this person was able to have a little bit deeper of a conversation as they were able to kind of then re-articulate some of the ideas that they meant in the conversation.
Okay, great.
Instead of just kind of presuming that my clarity would cause conflict. It didn't cause conflict. And especially it's the reminder, the I word, right? I didn't threaten them with their point of view. I simply said, that would not work for me.
Yeah.
And what works for me is XYZ. So some of our listeners, I know you probably this is something you do all the time. But for some of our listeners, this might not be something you do. And so I guess baby steps.
Yeah. Or big steps. That's a big step for you to kind of say that. And that actually leads right into our topic today.
Okay. But did you do anything for our reflection or our homework or our...
I mean, I'm always nice to everyone.
No, actually, yeah. Well, this was part of the discussion.
In this sense, you're right.
That you're very clear.
I'm very clear, and I'm
often
perceived as blunt and forward, but now as you're seeing it, I don't have context behind my blunt and forwardness.
Yeah.
I don't have extra meaning of negativity, judgment behind it. And once people recognize that, then my bluntness is nice because it's clear, it's concise.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be harmful or hurtful.
Yeah, you're just trying to get clarity.
I'm just trying to get clarity.
And I think that is like when I think about the language of niceness, that space of clarity is actually really important.
Yeah.
And we only get that when we're being authentic.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So okay. Yeah. What's your topic?
Oh, we're going to deep voices now. You can spend a whole episode on just...
Ooh.
I don't know. That's probably not our forte. Maybe not. So my topic, it's actually off of the same conversation you've had. And now I was not a part of this conversation. So I want to make that very clear.
How do you even know what the conversation is? I don't think I shared this conversation with you. So go ahead. You might be presuming.
Then never mind. I am based on how you outlined this.
Yeah.
There was another conversation you had about with people and their family members and behavior, and that you told me about, and it didn't sit right with me. So I was assuming this is what you're talking about.
Okay.
But you're right. It sounds like I'm just assuming, and maybe you've had many conversations recently about people and family members and behavior. So today I want to take a step and really look at, we talk a lot about racism and sexism on our podcast, and we've touched slightly on ableism, but I want to dig into ableism a little bit more and how, again, the topic from last week around niceness really bleeds in to ableism.
Yeah.
And so for everyone who doesn't know what ableism is, because sometimes ableism actually sounds like a positive word.
Yeah,
we've had this discussion before.
I used to think that it was positive and I used to think that disabled felt negative, and yet I'm learning that disabled activism is actually a really positive thing.
Yeah, and there's different theories on both, but ableism is what's an ism. And so when you think about isms are not necessarily... They're all things that need to work on, if you think about it. So like racism.
Yeah.
Racism is something that we're working on. Feminism is a place where there's not equity, and we're working on it. So it's not necessarily negative things, but it's places where there's not equality. So ableism...
Wait, hang on. I love the way that you put feminism and racism together, in that it's something we're working on. We've assigned negative language to this, and so, or negative connotation. Well, they are negative.
Well, racism is negative.
And feminism, anyways, but it's interesting to be thinking about the ism as a way that we need to open up our minds and be more curious about.
So
like, why does it exist?
Yes, well, and it's about the equality of that.
Yeah.
And so ableism is about oppression against people with differences, whether it's, physical differences you can see, mental differences that are harder to kind of pinpoint. And now, so for context also to the larger group, in the last couple of years, and I think I might have said this on the podcast, maybe not, last couple of years with therapy, with things, I have come to find out that I am on the spectrum. And this is something that maybe is surprising to other people in my life, was honestly not a surprise to me at all. It was actually very eye-opening and affirming, and things that I've questioned about myself and my thought process and my differences my whole life finally were opened, and my eyes...
Like they say, you could unmask.
I mean, it was just a eye-opening event for me. The more I read, the more all of this, I felt so much more normalized and understood than I'd ever had in my entire life. So that's kind of my journey around this. and like understanding masking. And for everyone who doesn't know what masking, and this can happen in the autism world, it can happen in the, around race, it can happen with your sexual identity, but it's essentially putting on a mask to make yourself more aligned, more agreeable to the public around you.
Well, I
the
would
people
say
around you.
As a feminist, as someone in the workspace, I always used it as the language of assimilation.
Yeah, masking is like assimilation.
Yeah, but like when I was like one of the first female executives in where I used to work, and it was odd. And in fact, I'll remember the Halloween, I dressed as a man because everyone I worked with was a male. And so
I've never heard that story.
Yeah, you
That's
never
really
heard that
funny.
story. You should look for those pictures. But I thought it was a simulation, like I'm going to do exactly what they say I should do so that I fit in.
Yes, very similar. So same kind of concept, just different terms. And people use a lot of the terms of masking, or code switching is used a lot around with race, things of that sort. But in the neurodivergent world, it is called masking. And so now back to the topic that we were talking about.
Yeah.
You recently had a conversation with your friend. And again, I was not there, so I don't want to say that I was there, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. It's your interpretation of this conversation that made me thinking in general, I should say. And the conversation was about this person's family member who is also on the spectrum. And the autism spectrum is a spectrum for a reason. It goes from low needs to high needs. This person has a lot higher needs than I do. And so this person's, I would say, habits and traits are a little bit more obvious, whereas I've learned to mask my whole life. And so what this friend of yours was talking about is basically they were trying to train or give tips or all of this for that family member to kind of be a little bit more assimilated into society. And so anyways, that really set me off.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, I can stop and get your reaction
No,
that first.
I remember you and I talking about this, and it's just like all the conversations that we're in the middle of, they're so nuanced.
Yeah.
Because, I like hard and fast rules. So in my mind, I thought, well, if it's a child under 18, we should be able to dictate the way in which we should model the behavior or continually guide the behavior. There's the thought there. Or we should completely accept the behavior. I don't know. It's really nuanced, isn't it? Yeah.
And to me, as an adult, I don't think it's nuanced.
Okay, so tell me your point of view. Because clearly this is maybe something that you're wanting to share with our listeners on what we should do or what we could do when we encounter persons that are neurodivergent.
Well, and I think it's beyond.
And I do have to say, I think I'm much more gracious with my students than I am with my family
members.
Yeah,
totally.
Because when I understand that a student has neurodiversity, I might get a plan from the clinic. I might have a dialogue with them, and then I understand that they may need to repeat more often, and that I'm not clear, and then I have to be more clear. And so there are, I wouldn't expect them to change. Yeah. That is interesting. I wouldn't expect them to change, at least now in my journey.
And again,
in my journey years ago, I would have expected change.
And so this is where I think in your mind and a lot of people's minds, there are nuances and stuff. And so because the nuances around the niceness that they were talking about, you're trying to protect someone you love from society who may not give them that patience or that generosity.
Yeah.
So I understand where the desires come from. I'm not, again, so this is why I'm saying it kind of tied into the niceness thing. Because it's truly about, okay, if I can teach them different ways of assimilating in society, different ways ways of becoming, more normalized, like I can help them in life.
Okay, so here's a question. So we're so used to, especially my generation, especially if you're a parent I'm so used to this language of modeling
Yeah.
good behavior and hoping that good behavior would be adopted by the relationships that I'm invested in.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's not the case, like for example, I really have to see, and neurodiversity I think is actually really challenging.
Yeah.
Because if someone is appearing with disabilities, I would never expect someone who is using a prosthetic for an arm to do something that they may have been able to do naturally with an arm. And so there's different expectations.
Yeah.
So help us a little bit on what that is.
So first, I want to tackle two things there. Something that you said, and then something for everyone. I want to be clear on what falls under neurodiversity. So neurodiversity includes autism, ADHD, and now I feel bad, but I used to think it stopped at that. But actually mental illnesses like depression, anxiety, bipolar, and OCD all fall under neurodivergencies. Epilepsy, Tourette's syndrome, and dyslexia all fall under the cadence of neurodivergency. So that's just for context for everyone. The second thing I want to kind of talk about is you kind of hit it on the head with modeling behavior.
Yeah.
And now, but think about that statement for a second.
I know.
Modeling behavior.
The minute you said epilepsy, I have had an epileptic student. I would never expect them to change.
Yeah.
Because they had to forewarn me of what a seizure might look like, how I'd have to respond to that seizure, what I would have to do to make that safe. So you're right. I would never model safety. I let them model safety to me.
Same with the Tourette's, which is a little bit more outspoken.
Interesting.
But so when you think of neurodiversity, it's essentially your brain is on a different track than a neurotypical brain. So again, going back to your concept of modeling, and that's what I think everyone has thought about. If your brains are on a different track than the person modeling to you, that is going to be a really hard track and a very discouraging track to get to. Is the thing. It almost won't happen. And so this is where things like masking come about, is because, again, as someone on the spectrum with autism, I'm not stupid. I see now the differences between me and society. I see things that I can fit in, but I have to think about those things. And so, for example, I think some of the great examples is we used to force left-handed people to write right-handed. And the thing is, they can write right-handed, but they have to think about it every time instead of naturally doing it with their left hand. And so I think that's kind of breaking it down. And now I'm at a low need.
I can give a perfect example. When who I was maybe 10 years ago. Okay, so I have a student who has autism and can't look me in the eye.
Yeah.
They just can't look me in the eye. I would now not expect them to look me in the eye. I would have no expectation. Doesn't mean that they're not capable of doing the work. It doesn't mean that they're not capable of being in the classroom. They just can't look me in the eye.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I might have spent time trying to train them to look me in the eye and convince them that by looking someone in the eye, they're going to have a better opportunity on that interview.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Was it for their help or for your own comfortability?
Well, I thought it was for their help. Wait, hang on.
Yeah.
So this is where it's all nuanced and confusing. I thought it was for their help because, of course, I'm a teacher. I want them to get a job. I want them to be productive in society. But now that I know that this is a situation that is really difficult for them, I know that I need to realign or rethink the way that I'm interacting with this particular student. Yeah.
And I think that's what set me off about the comment of the person made the comment, and again, I was not there. I'm just hearing context. And so it's not about this person, but it's the general understanding of neurodiversity. Neurodivergency is wanting to change the person to, again, help them to fit society.
Yeah, because I think, if we go with if people are leading with good intention.
Yes.
They're not, but I also think that we're leading with good intention and we might be leading with lack of information. Like when my mom was alive, when grandma was alive, there was all these supposedly handicap-friendly entries. There's no way she would have been able to open the door.
No.
There's no way that she had access to that information. And I would have never expected her to.
Totally.
And so maybe some of the things that you're saying has to do with our standardizations again.
Yeah.
We've talked about that colonial mindset and that expectation.
Yes.
So how do you then, I'm going to ask this rhetorically because I think I have an example, but clearly if the person's in class or how do you create systems of success? How do you create systems of success? Maybe that's the question.
Yeah. I think that's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have, there's similar answers in the same way that I think we're looking at these conversations around race, sexism, sexuality, it's now and later, in the sense that right now it starts with an imperfect system.
Yeah.
And the only way to move through an imperfect system is for more and more people to recognize the system.
Yes.
Recognize the faults of the system is the first step. And then second step, recognize then how you can open up the system to be more inclusive.
Yeah.
Now, those start to become harder and harder because it is now
policy,
fully adjusting the system.
Laws.
It's policy and laws. And so as we know, with white women, we like to power surge and then get exhausted. And so it's a
Go to
long,
apathy.
Exactly. It's a long marathon. It is not a sprint. It is a long marathon. And so it's the same. And so this is what I'm saying. It's the same conversation we're having about all of these things. And this is why I think it's funny where someone can be open to sexuality, yet they're still closed around race issues, or vice versa. They're open to race issues and they're closed around neurodiversity. And so a lot of it is just education within this, education within differences, education with accommodations, kind of what that looks like. And then also within ourselves, leaning into being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Letting people be in their space, and it's okay for you to be uncomfortable when someone else is in their when someone else is within your space. So like, to me, those are the big tools at first before we can even make long change.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, I know that's a pretty...
No, so it's funny. I told you I was asking a rhetorical question because and it is interesting how now we're on podcast 40. We've learned so much. And one of the things we talked about in an earlier podcast is trusting the lived experience, right? And so one of the things that I've been trying to do with my students that are neurodiverse is to get in alignment with truth. Truth. So a lot of them have had to lie in a lot of their academic experiences because they didn't want to tell the teacher they couldn't handle this or because it's never really their intent not to succeed. Or not to succeed according to the teacher standards. So one of the things that I've been doing with my students that are at least the ones that are anxious, any ones that actually talk to me or exhibit some behavior that is not part of the normalized, I'm going to come to class, do my work, it's going to get in on time. I always ask them, what would success look like for you? What do you need? What can we do within this setting so that you feel you succeed?
Yeah.
And so typically it's really interesting because often these students give me a harder assignment than I was giving them. And then we'll have to whittle it down to be like, wait a second, here's the goals of the assignment. Here was the initial deadlines of the assignment, or that what is it in that space? How can we help you do that? And then often, it's because I want people to succeed. I don't want them to fail. So anyways, it goes back to talking, doesn't it? It goes back to asking what their expectations are of themselves.
Lived experience.
Now, again, I'm talking about young adults. I'm not talking about a 3 or a 4-year-old.
No.
But I'd imagine, and this would be interesting to have parents that have children on the spectrum. What does their 3 or 4, are their expectations they give themselves? What kind of agency does that child have?
Adjusting the world, like I'm not as worried about the kids because they will be growing up in a system that's more inclusive. I'm also talking about how can we switch for adults now? How can we change and move our society? And so I think those were great examples. We don't have a ton of time left, but I also, same thing for the workforce. I used to do that with my teams too, is, so often we hire people to fit in a box and we want them to do the exact same thing.
The cultural fit.
And the cultural fit. And sometimes people are not meant for those. And so what I always did too is I looked at the strengths of my team.
Yeah.
And, some people are great at this. Some people are great at this.
But it's funny because like you're talking about strength finders and those kind of things. But those are accepting our differences, but they don't give language like neurodiversity. And so we're not
That's not at all what I was talking about.
Sorry.
I was not talking about strength finders.
Okay. Got it.
But okay. I was talking about actual strengths of the human being. Like this person is good at analysis. This person is good at creative, whatever. That's what I'm talking about, not strength finders. But it takes time as leaders.
Yeah.
And this is what we're also saying too, is really owning that as leaders instead of just to have individualized working environments. And again, that's really a hard concept for a lot of people in our capitalist society, but it is going to be better overall for neurodivergent people.
Yeah.
And it's also they've shown statistically it's better overall. Diverse thinking in the workforce is better for your product. It's better for productivity. It's better for the workforce.
Well, so what's better is, again, we learn from one another.
Yes.
We learn instead of having someone try to change us, we begin to accept. Yeah, this is a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you,
You're
Jonelle.
welcome. So I guess
gosh.
that's reflection for next time. Where can you begin to accept people in your life that may not have always been easy for you?
Yeah. And maybe listening to them so that they can set their own expectations or own desires.
Yeah.
And then
instead
you say,
of putting yours on them.
And I love it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us on White Women Wake Up. We hope today's conversation sparks something in you, whether it's reflection, a new question, or a deeper commitment to showing up with empathy and accountability. If you found this episode meaningful, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs it to hear it. You can also connect with us on Instagram, YouTube, or at whitewomenwakeup.com or Substack. You name it, we're present. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, be open, and let's keep waking up together. Bye.
Would you like to tell the audience members your comment about my hair when we first got on? Because that was affirming.
No, we're going to tell the audience members how I keep forgetting to turn off my phone.
The audience, they know that.
Oh God,
now
I got to figure out how to turn my phone off.